You could call this an erotic horror. There's a lot of sex, very graphic. I was a little turned off by the graphic nature of the sexual content in this book. Today, I want to talk mostly new horror books. A few weeks ago, I posted a video that was talking about the 2024 Bram Stoker Awards finalists. Again, for those of you who might not have seen that video, that this is an award that is presented by the Horror Writers Association for the best horror or greatest achievements in horror for a given year. And there's two categories specifically that I zoomed in on: new novels and just best novels. And I picked two novels from both categories to try to read before the final awards are presented in June. I think it's June 14th here, coming up in a couple of months. Well, I'm waist deep in horror right now. I finished one of those books and I have started two additional. And so I've got only one more I've got to get my hands on in order to be well on my way to finishing all these books before the finalists are, or before the final awards are presented here in a couple of months. The first book that I read and finished was Midnight Rooms by Danya Coles. Now, this is the book that sounded like a classic Gothic horror novel. In this book, it's set in England in 1840, and the main character is a woman named Orabella. And Orabella, she is a mixed race woman. So half black, half white. Both her parents have passed away, and she lives with her aunt and uncle in their family estate in England. Well, the thing is that this family isn't wealthy. They're not poor, but they're not wealthy either. And Orabella, who is now 26 years old, realizes that her uncle would be just as happy if he could somehow marry her off somehow. And sure enough, one day she finds that there is a suitor who is in her uncle's home who is asking for Orabella's hand in marriage. And Orabella kind of feels like she doesn't have much of a choice because she doesn't have a whole lot of prospects out there. And this stranger seems kind enough. So she agrees. And this man, Elias Blackersby, marries her in a quick ceremony the very next day and whisks her off to Corringhill Manor, which is his family estate. And this is where you start getting into that classic kind of Gothic horror story. In a way, it reminds me of another book I covered a couple of months ago called Mexican Gothic. It's got a similar idea where the heroine of the story is kind of, for whatever reason, is plucked up and put out in the middle of nowhere in an ancient home and has to face the terrors that reside there without really any support from anyone anywhere near where she's living. Well, in this case, Elias, her husband, he's an odd person, but genuinely seems to care for his new bride. Orabella, on the other hand, she's trying to navigate a very peculiar household. This house is rotting. It's falling apart. It's massive. She has a hard time even finding her way through this. And there are rules in the house that she has to observe. There are very quirky servants who live there. And of course, the father of Elias, he seems very peculiar indeed as well. And throughout the course of this story, Orabella has to come to terms with what it is that she's gotten herself married into and how she is going to survive. So the book is a very well-written book. I really enjoyed this. Danya Coles is a masterful writer. Very, very impressed. I call this book a slow burn, but in a satisfying way. So it's not slow burn in that you're waiting for things to happen, but the terror seems to mount progressively throughout the story, and it's done in a way that I think you find it to be, or at least I found it to be, very, very enjoyable. Now, one of the things that she does very, very well, the author does very, very well in this, is she creates this kind of surreal atmosphere throughout the book after she gets to Corringhill Manor, and she where you're not sure what's real and what isn't. As a matter of fact, there are certain times when something definitely happened that you as a reader know it happened, but then she questions it later on, and so you start to question, well, maybe it didn't happen the way she thought it happened. And so sometimes you're not sure what's real and what isn't, just like the heroine of the story. And it's done very, very well. It's done purposefully and masterfully by the author. Coles does this really, really well. The Only thing that I didn't particularly enjoy, and I'm sure a lot of folks won't agree with me, is this is pretty much, you could call this an erotic horror. There's a lot of sex, very graphic, and it's kind of essential to the story, so I don't falter for it, but I was a little turned off by the graphic nature of the sexual content in this book. I didn't feel it was absolutely necessary to go as far as it did, but you know, I might be more of a prude than you, and it may not be as much of a distraction for you. But I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very well done. I think a great first horror novel, and it certainly should be a contender for finalist for Best New Novel. Now, the second book that I'm reading, I've got a good start in it, is This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer. Now, this book, just like I said in a video a couple of weeks ago, has a special appeal to me because it takes place in the rural stretches of central southern Kentucky. Matter of fact, part of it is kind of rooted in the Red River Gorge area, and Muir Valley, which is a really remote area. It's very popular with backpackers and campers, and I've done backpacking in that area and some hiking as well. And so the descriptions and the terrain, the topography that's being mentioned here, it resonates because it's familiar to me, and I could see just how creepy of a setting that this could be. So I'm really enjoying that bit of it. Now, I haven't gotten deep enough into the story to be able to tell you how well the author does in delivering the goods for the horror, but it does a really good job setting things up. I mean, it leaves no question. The very first chapter, very first words out of this are, these people are dead. This horrible thing happened. These bodies are discovered, and the question is, what happened? Because the people that are mentioned this are these 4 young people that went off for an expedition into this remote part of Kentucky wilderness looking for something. I'll let you read the book. They disappeared, and now the question is, what happened? And then the story, after that first chapter, backs up into, this is the story of these 4 people, and now you have to wonder what horrible things brought them to this grisly fate. Actually, 3 people are dead and 1 person is missing. So what happened? Is the missing person somehow responsible? You got to read the book to find out. Now, the third book that I've just started reading because I was finishing up my military science fiction books, so I'm not that far into it at all, is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, this one is not a contender for the 2024 Bram Stoker Awards. This was actually the winner of the 2020 Bram Stoker Awards. And Stephen Graham Jones is also in contention for Best Novel this year for I Was a Teenage Slasher. But because I just got my hands on The Only Good Indians, I'm going to continue reading that one, and I'm going to roll that one up into what I think would be the best for the books to win in their respective categories. I will let you know how that turns out. The Only Good Indians starts off strong because it automatically creates this empathy with the main character. So again, I'm only a few chapters into it, so I don't really have much to report on that one, except that you can tell that Stephen Graham Jones is a skillful writer, and that he immediately creates characters that you want to continue the story with. So more to come on that one. And that's where we're at. The fourth book that I'm reading from this crop of Bram Stoker Awards nominees is The House of Bone and Rain. So, but I haven't got my hands on it yet. I figure I'll finish up these before I start digging into that fourth one. But once I finish all 4 of those, then I'm going to give you my thoughts on which ones of these I think is the strongest contender for the Bram Stoker Award here in June. But if you are reading any of these books, let me know what you think. And if you have any strong opinions on any of these authors or other books that have been nominated for the Bram Stoker Awards, please leave a comment. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. Have a good day.